welcome to this live Q&A with Breathe today. I'm your host, Amy, and we are really excited to be holding this post-election Q&A session. We are joined by some wonderful partners today. Emma's making her presence known, it's great. No, you're fine. We've got the wonderful Emma Del Torto joining from Effective HRM, Juliet Irving from HR Solutions, and we have Breeze's very own head of people, Charlie O'Brien. So we've got a great panel lined up to answer all your burning questions after the general election next week. So enough from me. I will hand over to our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. So Emma, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Emma Del Torto. I run an outsourced HR and health and safety consultancy based in South Wales. It's called Effective HRM. My background is I've been running this business for 13 years, so I just realised that we've never been an SME business running in a Labour government, so that's a first for us. And before that, I was a qualified solicitor, practicing in employment law, a bit of public, a bit of private sector experience, commercial law, but main experience as a trade union lawyer. So that's my background.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emma. And Juliet, if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Juliet Irving. I work for HR Solutions. We're a HR consultancy supporting SMEs across the UK. My background, I've worked in consultancy for over 10 years now. I've also worked in-house in HR departments, so I've seen the HR landscape from both sides. But my role really is advising organisations on questions day to day, just as this. So hopefully I can add some value today.
Thank you, Juliet. We're looking forward to having you on. And Charlie, if you could please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, of course. I'm Charlie O'Brien. I'm head of people here at Breathe. So I've been in HR for about 15 years now, only ever really done in-house HR. So I'll be talking about how I bring this to life as the in-house head of HR here at Breathe.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. We're really excited to have all three of you join us today. But first off today, we are going to kick off with a poll. We would love to hear from you. I think some people have already submitted, which is brilliant. How are you feeling about HR post-election? Got a few different answers here. So please start submitting your answers and we will briefly discuss how you're feeling after this. But Emma, have you heard anyone kind of saying how they're feeling particularly about it at the moment?
Well, unsurprisingly, I've had some clients contacting us already, being apprehensive. I think there's a lot of apprehension around what's the unknown and the uncertainty. And I think the response we're giving is to try and provide some reassurance. So hopefully we'll do that in today's session.
That sounds good to me. I can see we are around 60% of attendees answering, so this is great news. We'll wait for just a couple of more and then we'll move on and have a little conversation about that. So please do submit your answers. We just really want to hear how you're doing right now. Perfect, cool. We'll pop into the next. No surprise here, there's a real mixture of responses here, but yeah, nervous at the top. They're feeling okay, that's good to see at 33%. Indifferent, there's quite a mixture here. Julia, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think actually the results are quite interesting. I thought it would be more nervous, especially from the feedback that we've had from some of our clients that we've been supporting. But also people are excited because it's change and there are new things to come and it's going to be a lot of new ways of working that we're going to have to get our head around. So I think the mixture actually does show a good representation.
Thank you, Juliet. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for answering this, and time really to kick off with the Q&A. We've got the rest of the session now. So one of the first questions we received, how will a Labour government impact SMEs? I'd love to do a round table. Emma, perhaps if you'd like to kick us off, and then Juliet and Charlie, you can share your thoughts.
I'm quite excited about the opportunities that the new change of government is presenting us, and I'm watching closely what is being said and being done as well in terms of what Keir Starmer is doing, who he's talking to, and it's only been a week, right? So it's already interesting to me that I said already that I'm based in Wales. They've already they're engaging both the Secretary of State for Wales, Joe Stevens, and Keir Starmer are already engaging with Tata Steel. So there appears to be a commitment to business, and I think that's a commitment to saving jobs. And I think that SMEs should be looking at as a positive. I think it's positive. I think there's a lot of fear mongering potential around the unknown. I think I already mentioned that, but I think that there'll be a positive impact for SMEs. I don't know what any of the other panelists think about that as well.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. Definitely agree. I think one of the things that has come out of some of the conversations I've been having is the potential for increasing costs, increase in processes that need to be followed. So I think that's where some of the apprehension's coming from. That the impact on SMEs especially is that there'd be more burden, more red tape to jump through to manage employees at the end of the day. So obviously we can talk about the specifics as we go through the questions, but I think that's been the main impact that I think some of our organisations have been worrying about at this time, before we know the specifics anyway.
Yeah, and for me, mirroring both of what you say, I think it's great. I mean, this is a new working deal for people, and we as HR are people too. So I think it really is about creating better workplaces to drive productivity. So there's quite a lot that will be coming out. I'm quite excited to hear the King's speech and the industrial strategy here. That will really drive and embed what it is that they're trying to deliver. But I don't think it's about fear mongering. I think it's really now for us to think about our processes. Quite a lot of things that they're putting in place, HR already kind of wanted that, and we'll cross some of those as we discuss around the table today. But I actually think it's a positive movement for employers, and it just makes us try and improve and create those better workplaces, which is what all of us have been doing all along. So I think it's a positive step. We just need to not panic. We need to stay calm. And 100 days doesn't mean it's all coming out in 100 days. It means that we're going to hear more in 100 days, but to start thinking about it. So it's all about preparedness.
I think that's a really good point, and I think it's the fear is of red tape and regulation, and I don't get the impression that this is that this is a government that has an intention to bog us down in regulation, and the other thing is that look, we're out of pandemic, but we've experienced lots of regulatory change that was rapid change. So we've been through this before, really recently. And the HR departments, the small businesses, everybody was able to deal with it. So I think we're better equipped, having been through that experience as well. So I think we should look at this as a really good opportunity to be better employers as well, to provide better work. And I think that's the message that's coming through from the Labour government.
Thank you so much for your contributions. I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people on the call, especially today. There is still time. Let's kind of take a pause and not panic. Another question here, this has been asked a few times. Is a probation period rendered useless if day one rights are introduced? Juliet, if you might like to kick us off with this one, and then again we'll round robin.
Yeah, so I don't think useless is the word. I think more important is going to be the word for a probation period going forward, because the proposals have said that, yes, day one rights to claim unfair dismissal, so no longer 2 years, which is a massive jump and will be a big change. But they have suggested that the probation period would still be in place and it could still be used as a potential way to then manage employees that weren't working out for whatever reason. So I think it would be more important in terms of employers managing that time and having a set probation period, having a set process, because a lot of employers don't use it currently because they don't really need to, but I think it will be more important and will be needed. So, and I hope that is going to be the case, especially for a lot of organisations who are probably panicking about this day one right, that there might be a bit of leeway with a probation period in place.
I agree fully. If anything, it actually helps HR. I think many of us have heard probation happening and people passing when actually reality is that they weren't up to performing correctly. So I think this is about making sure you have fair and transparent processes, looking at the duration and actually embedding it properly and upskilling your managers now. If I could take one thing away, it'd be looking at your processes, looking at the duration and getting your managers up and ready to be able to handle that, to be able to identify those fair and transparent conversations. So if anything, I think it's probably a step in the right direction when it comes to how we're currently dealing with probationary periods.
Yeah, I think absolutely echo what the other two have said.
Sorry,
that's really good. That's really good to hear. I was going to say, yeah.
I would say also that probationary periods are massively underutilised, and it's a really good opportunity to use them. And the thing about probationary periods is that they are usually in the contract, that invariably in a contract of employment and invariably in the policies and handbook. And people know about probationary periods. It's the managing the expectations of the employees. So employees expect to be taken through a probationary period and probationary reviews. We often hear our clients just not using them or not engaging with their employees. People start and they don't have the monthly or the 3 monthly or 6 monthly reviews at all, and employees have to be employees chase the employer. So have I passed my probationary review? So I think first of all, I don't think that unfair dismissal is going to be a day one right. If you look back at history, it never has been, and so you look at we've had it change a couple of times since the 70s. Now, I don't remember the 70s, although I was around in the 70s when it was as low as 6 months. But I remember when it changed in, I think it was 2012, changed from a year to 2 years. I think that's when it changed. The qualifying period changed. So I don't think it will be a day one right. Not to be unfairly dismissed, but I think that we should be using the probationary reviews and probationary period much better.
Thank you for sharing, Emma. Juliet, did you want to share anything else? Sorry.
I was just going to add that it's going to be really interesting on this point when more information comes out about the timescale probation period. Will that be something that's going to be set themselves, and therefore would it be something then that an organisation would say, well, we'll set a 9-month probation period or a 12-month? Is that going to be allowed? And is that going to be a loophole that perhaps employers can use to avoid the potential?
Thank you, Juliet. I think it just went a little out there, but hopefully we'll get you back properly for the next answers. We'll kick off with the next question. Time does seem to fly in these sessions. How quickly will 0 hours casual contracts cease to exist? And therefore, how quickly will part-time contracts have to be offered to staff? Are there expected to be any changes to 0 hour contracts? Charlie, would you be happy to kick off with this one?
Yeah, of course. So I don't have a glass ball with this, and I think that it's going to be a little bit more slowly phased in. I mean, there's conversations on, it's really about removing exploitative 0 hour contracts, and really about having those conversations right now. So I think Right now, it's about looking at your current workforce. I do think that we're going to see a big shift to companies now using temps, so agencies a lot more. Fixed term contracts will come in more. Now, of course, that doesn't eliminate any unfair dismissals with regards to if day one does come in, but it caps the amount of risk with regards to payments there. But I do think that we're shifting towards that. So planning your workforce and your recruitment strategies right now, but it isn't about removing. A lot of people will be working with seasonal work and will have increases and decreases, but 0 hours was flexibility for the individual and the employer. So I think what this does is it gives more security to the employees and a little bit more risk for the employer. But I don't think this is something that we're going to wake up and it's going to be happening in the next 6 months immediately with everything. They have to fully consult. It's a big shift. So I think we've got time to start preparing now and looking at our recruitment strategies as it currently is.
Just to put this in some perspective, I did a little bit of research and reminded myself of Tony Blair's manifesto. So hark back to 1997, and this was on the agenda then. So getting rid of 0 hours contracts was on the agenda. It was in the manifesto then. So I think put that into perspective, and we have. As a business, we have lots of clients in hospitality, catering, cleaning sectors, care sectors, and those are the sectors where we see a lot of 0 hours contracts usage. I don't think we're going to be getting rid of 0 hours contracts. They have their place, and I think just to reiterate what Charlie said about exploitative contracts. And if you remember, there's been a clause in a 0 hours contract that I haven't seen in a while. So I think that's gone, and that's the where you're not allowed to work for anyone else, which really is the exploitative aspect. I think, and so I don't think we're going to see an end to 0 hours contracts. They have their place, but just not to be abused.
Yeah, to add to that, I think it is all about that giving a bit more stability to the employee, and this all links with the predictability of terms that was coming in anyway. It is just going to be a slightly different way of working, but again, we support many organisations in those kind of industries that Emma mentioned, where they work really well. So I think it's going to be interesting as to what is going to be defined as exploitative and how that is then identified, and those ones are changed, with the hope that it's a 0 hours contract would still live on in some way, even if it's with that proposal of having some sort of guaranteed hours, even if they're very low, but just to give some kind of security to those workers.
Thank you all. Hopefully that helps the participant who asked that. And just off the back of the probation period question, someone has just asked, if an employee is off sick a lot during their probation period, do you think going forward that you'll still be able to extend their probation to account for the periods of sickness longer than a week? If someone's happy to help on that one.
I would hope so. I hope that is going to be the case. I mean, we can do that now, but I think this is going to come into the detail as to when the more information comes out as to what the rules are going to be around timescales of the probation period and what the rules are in extending, because what's going to stop an employer extending up to 2 years probation period to, like I say, to try and get that loophole to use as we are currently. But it makes sense. It makes sense to me. It sounds reasonable to do so, because the whole point of the probation period is to assess suitability on both sides. And if somebody has been absent, then you can't always do that in that shorter amount of time. But we don't know at this stage.
Thank you, Juliet.
And I think I'd just add the caveat of disability discrimination, and that the onus will be as it is today, on employers to make sure that they're not discriminating and that they understand the reasons for the absence. seeing, we know about reasonable adjustments, whether reasonable adjustments are required, even during a probation period.
Thank you very much. Right, on to the next question. What are the changes to employees' rights in relation to mental health issues? Quite a big question here. Emma, would you be happy to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, I was thinking about this, and arguably a lot of the employment rights issues impact on workers' rights, impact on a worker's mental health, thinking about job security and things like that. But I think that possibly the main one that is proposed around mental health is the right to switch off, which interestingly France has already implemented that, I think back in 2017. So the right to when you're not at work, you don't have to answer the work phone, you don't have to check your emails, which are really good practices, and which are things I think we live in a always on society. I know that I am very guilty of this, and I have to really watch myself not checking emails when on holiday, but they come into the phone, so all of those things. So I think that possibly that might be a significant potential change. And I think that a change for the good as well, if that does come to pass.
Yeah, so for me, I think the Labour are really kind of stating that they want to modernise the Mental Health Act. So post-pandemic, we all changed, as we've discussed a little bit at the beginning. There was lots of things that have triggered a lot of this. So I think it's really about improving that employment support for disabled people and speed up that access to work scheme. So ensuring that people have the right mental health support with any challenges, and that we're making those reasonable adjustments. So everything from the right to disconnect or right to switch off policies that are coming out this way, down to that menopausal support and the guidelines that are there. I think it's really putting employers at the forefront to think way bigger than they currently are, and to really think about their processes and practices to make sure that they are doing everything and as much as we can to be able to be deemed as reasonable. But there's probably going to be a lot more information on what that really means in black and white, and it will probably overlap quite a lot of the things that they are looking at introducing.
Thank you, Charlie and Emma. Juliet, did you want to share anything as well?
I think what I was thinking of, obviously echoing everything that's been said already, but is the changes to, or the proposed changes to SSP, and it removing the waiting days and it being payable from day one. So I'm sure we've all managed absence cases of where mental health is involved, and it might give employers a bit more flexibility in having that odd day if they are suffering from their mental health, and not having that financial burden and forcing themselves to come into work. Now, I know that's very much on the employee side and not what employers want to hear in regards to that and the increased costs, but it might actually have a bit more of a wider impact on people managing their mental health a bit better and a bit more in a positive way. So again, yeah, on the side of the employee, but with more impacts for the employer.
Thank you all for those insights. Really, really helpful there. And on to the next. What are the new government going to do with the Equality Act? It's quite a big question there. If someone is happy to kick off, perhaps. Charlie, is that okay?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it is a huge question, really. But for me, they're looking at expanding it. So the Equality Act works to protect people from discrimination, so our protected characteristics. And for that, what they're looking at doing is implementing more of the socio-economic protected characteristics. So with that, I'm talking about the new race Equality Act. So that comes into play with regards to ethnicity pay gap reporting. So we've already got the gender, but now they're looking at ethnicity and expanding that again to disability pay gap reporting. Another thing that they're looking at doing is dual discrimination rights, which basically means one claim, multiple instances that can be brought forward. So I think that they're expanding it and enhancing it, and more details will come. But a lot of organisations, even below 250 employees, are already showcasing, revealing, putting it out there to businesses and being as transparent as possible with potential talent and others of what that gender does. So we just need the details of what it is that they're looking for the other two new pay gap reportings that they're doing. But for me, they're looking at expanding and enhancing it.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And I think even though they're introducing potentially extra things for organisations to do, I just think the fact that they are looking at widening the scope is just bringing it more to the fore of employers' awareness, and that this is important and it needs to be taken into account with every employment decision. So I think it's a really important message that's come through to say, yes, we are expanding this and putting in some more measures to work to.
I think I'd reiterate what's already been said, and these are unsurprising proposals as well. I think they are expansions of existing Equality Act protections for employees, and I think we welcome them. I think that I don't think that they will extend to SMEs. Obviously, we know already that the gender pay gap reporting is just for employers of over 250 people. So I don't think that it's going to hit that aspect of the reporting aspect is going to hit the SME market. And because, but then if it did, it would provide an additional layer of accountability, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But I think watch the space. This one isn't going to be introduced easily, quickly, or lightly. There'll be lots of consultation around these changes.
Thank you so much. We've just had a question actually off the back of these answers, so thank you. Someone's asking, as an SME with approximately 60 staff, what would the benefits be of doing internal reporting on gender, ethnicity and disability pay gap reporting? Who would like to kick that one off? I think there could be some great answers here.
Yeah, I can add here.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead.
I think I think that the aspect of transparency is a really good thing, and if you do, as a smaller business, if you look at the data and you are mindful and you're intentional, I think you're less likely to come up against tribunal claims for falling short of those obligations, and I think also to be an employer of choice. I think having that level of transparency would be a really good thing as an employer and as a business. I think it would help. I think it would really help a business to have that level of transparency, and it would benefit the business as well as the employees.
Completely agree with you, Emma. Transparency is very big on Breathe's agenda personally, but really transparency is about rebuilding that trust between employee and employer. So even if you're not publishing anything and you're looking at it internally, you're making those starting points to be able to identify any gaps that you currently have, to be able to have those conversations with key stakeholders to make any changes that you need to be considering. So yeah, I think that you might not go to the exact detail of all of the calculations that a 250 plus company will be able to do. And perhaps you won't start including any outsourced workers at this stage. But I think it's really fundamental to be looking at all of these things so that you know exactly where you're sitting currently. And then you're able to start communicating and sending those clear messages, because talent looking at your business wants to hear about it. They want to know that you're looking at it. So it makes you attractive too.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that's been said, I was going to talk about being mindful of this anyway, no matter what size organisation that you are, and the impact on reputation as that employer brand and being the place to work has such a key message.
Thank you all. So many brilliant answers there. Hopefully that helped, Kate. We've got a union question that has come in. So I'm going to assign this one straight to Emma, please. There was a lot of talk about unions and making sure the right to join a union is communicated by employers. At the moment, we don't do anything with unions, brackets, we're a charity. Is there any advice for organisations, in particular charities, on what we might need to do there?
I think the first thing I'll say is don't panic, because there is going to be lots of notice and consultation around this. And there's talk about a requirement on employers, including charities, to make people aware that they have the right to join a union. Now, I think we'll know. We need to have more. We need to have more understanding about what the plans are. The manifesto was particularly vague about this. There were sort of lots of overarching proposals, but nothing very specific. So right now you don't need to do anything, and I think that there will be some things that will change. So there are some interesting things in the manifesto. For example, around balloting, electronic balloting, that might be, but that's not going to impact a workplace that doesn't recognise a union. I think that'll be the same. That's currently the situation. So you have to recognise. You have to formally recognise a union, and if you don't currently do that, we'll see. I don't think there are proposals about forcing businesses or organisations to recognise the union, but there are processes that are required, and I think that there are talks about changing those processes, about the numbers of people and all of that stuff. But right now, don't worry. Things will be made clearer in the fullness of time. I think that sounds a bit sort of not like a clear response, but I think it's just keep watching and waiting to see what happens.
Thank you for that advice, Emma.
I was going to add there, I had seen there's going to be a requirement to add to the contract of employment the fact that employees are able to join a union if they wish. So that's going to be one small change. Actually, it's going to be quite a big one in terms of documentation, ensuring that is going to be included in contracts that are issued from whatever point onwards. But I don't feel like it's going to have a big impact, really, in terms of employees seeing that in their contract and then saying, oh, I'd like to now join a union or get recognition. So I think it's going to be something that every organisation will need to implement, but I don't actually see a massive change coming from it.
Thank you, Juliet. Really helpful. We've got some questions coming in thick and fast now, so I'll try and catch up on a few. One here, I believe Labour plans to review parental carer and bereavement leave. Are there any indications or thought yet on what these changes could result in? Charlie, could you kick us off, please?
So they are looking at all three of those things. There's not too much detail around any of them specifically, but for bereavement, most companies already offer some form of compassionate leave, but what they're looking at is doing a statutory bereavement leave. We don't have any information of how long that would be, but right now a starting point for you would be to look at what you currently offer so that you know what might come in from a statutory perspective. Carers leave came in quite recently. I think that was April this year. So at the moment it's 1 week unpaid, and at the moment the commentary is about making that paid. So that's a possible change that could be coming their way. But again, they're still very early stages with communicating about that. And parental leave, all of our family leave stuff's quite complex. So really it's about, what is it, just paternity leave? Where does that expand to? Definitely things that will link with regards to day one rights, but nothing has really been disclosed right now with regards to that. So I think it's really, again, another case of just making sure that you're watching it, listening to it, and know what your policies are along the way. So do the work there to make sure that you're understanding what you currently offer.
Juliet or
I think
Emma?
that was a
Thank
really
you, Charlie.
comprehensive. Sorry, sorry. I think that was a really comprehensive answer. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think that was brilliant. I think there's so much unknown, and it's really, I think for me, it's about the paid, unpaid is the real key, between like the carers leave, bereavement leave, and other parental leave, because we know that that's why people don't take the leave. If it's unpaid, we know that especially around family-friendly rights, why leave isn't taken. It's because it's not paid, and people can't afford to take the leave. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what Labour puts in place.
Yeah, I think whilst we don't know the details, we know that there are going to be enhancements to what's currently in place. So what I would suggest for employers now who offer the statutory minimum on these kind of leaves is just to have a review and think, well, this is likely then to change for us. For those organisations that offer over and above already, they might already be in line with what is coming in. But yes, it's true. We are waiting for the details ourselves as well.
Thanks all. It sounds like we need to just keep watching this space. Emma, just from the back of the trade union question, someone's just asked, when adding something to contracts about trade unions, does this need to be backdated for existing staff? Would they need to consult and issue variation in terms of letters?
I think that would really depend about exactly what changes we're looking at. So the change to the amendment to the contract with regard to advising people of their rights who join a union, I don't think we can backdate that, because that's going to be a change in a legislative change if it comes into force. And we know, and this kind of goes to the fire and rehire stuff as well. We know that any change to a contract, there's a process for it. So there's a standard process. If there's a change to contractual terms, they have to be consented to, and then or consulted under consultation. And if people are worried about having to reissue contracts or issue new contracts with changes, actually, I don't think that's necessarily the case. One way of dealing with a change to a contractual term is by a letter of variation. So I think that there are easier administrative ways of dealing with this than sort of issuing everybody with new contracts, because we know that people hate change. Right? Most people might get suspicious with being forced to sign new contracts. So there are other ways of dealing with it, and letters of variation is one of the ways that we can deal with contractual changes.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much, Emma. The next question that has come in is a bit chunky, so I'll try and break it down. A recent People Management article said that under the new government, employees have been promised protection from unfair dismissal from their first day of employment. What does this mean for employers in terms of their own protection? Does this mean that it'll be more difficult to dismiss someone with fewer than 2 years service? So sorry, that's a very chunky one. So hopefully you can you'll be able to break that down. Charlie, might you kick us off, please?
So I think, again, we're still waiting for a lot more detail around day one and whether that's actually the time frame that they're looking at. So I think really what you're looking at is, it's not the intent of day one is right, but the reason that they're trying to implement this is what we're all trying to understand. So we have heard of businesses that hide behind those 2 years, and there's a lot of businesses that don't. So I think as long as you've got very fair and transparent processes, then normal, in my opinion, and we do need the details with the law, but normal process with regards to capability and conduct would still apply. And it's about getting the employers take a long time to make sure that the people that they're hiring is correct. So I don't think that the Labour Party is looking at damaging that, because that ultimately removes the better workplaces driving productivity. But I do think it's about being very clear, having those conversations, removing all of those "I didn't know I was underperforming" chats that we hear of so much, and really just getting everybody prepared. So day one, we don't know about, but I really think it's time to really focus on what you are doing right now and making sure that those clear, transparent processes are happening and taking place. I don't know if I answered every single one of the 5 questions in one, but hopefully a starting block for the other 2.
Thank you. I can add to it. I completely agree. It's going to be based on processes. So what if it's a day one right, if it's 6 months, whatever the threshold is going to be, the only way then to look at lawfully dismissing somebody would be by following a full process, as we do now for those with over 2 years service. And I think for me, it's ensuring that you've got those processes in place. You have a policy that states them really clearly, and that your line managers who are following these processes are fully trained and know exactly what to do at every step of the way. So it would be avoiding those conversations like Charlie mentioned about a performance management process where an employee simply wasn't aware. Well, that can't happen now. Employers just wouldn't have that flexibility to work around that with somebody under 2 years. So I think it's policies, following them, and training line managers fully in doing so.
I think I would add to what Charlie and Juliet have already said, and that is the importance of audit trails, and documenting the process, keeping good records, and not surprising an employee who's coming up for a conduct or capability dismissal, not surprising them with this out of the blue, and more so with capability, and so that they can't say they didn't know, or that they can't say, oh, it's for another reason. But already, we see some of this already, because already the Equality Act rights are day one right. So we do have to manage sets of rights. So we shouldn't be frightened of it. But as I said earlier, that I very much doubt that we're going to see a blanket unfair dismissal as a day one right. I'd be really surprised. There you go. I've said it out loud and online. I'd be really surprised if this happens.
Thank you all for sharing. Hopefully that is really helpful for our audience today. I'm sure it will be. We've got a live question that's come in. Will the periods of incapacity to work and linked periods become irrelevant if the new SSP rules come into force, about SSP being paid from first day and the elimination of unpaid waiting days? Another chunky question. Charlie, could you kick us off on that one, please?
Yeah, so I think most of the information that I've been reading around SSP is really all about removing the lower earners, eligibility for that, and also taking away the waiting day, so making it a day one. The rest with regards to periods of incapacity to work, I haven't seen much with regards to that. So I don't think there's too many changes with that. It's really about people not waiting with unpaid when they are sick for a certain duration, and those already underneath the threshold who are already lower earners not getting any form of income coming their way. So I think they're more looking at in my opinion, the beginning part of the process as opposed to what happens thereafter. But that's what I've seen so far to date and what's come across my way. So perhaps the others have more insight.
I've seen the same as you, Charlie. I understand that there's no proposed changes to the actual entitlement of the 28 weeks of SSP. So I'm sure the linked periods would still need to be used to manage that. to understand who's used the full entitlement or who's coming close to it. But yeah, again, it's one of those where we're waiting for the full details of what this is actually going to look like in practice. My personal opinion on this one is it's probably going to be one of the quicker ones that we do see. It might be a quick win for them to push through. So hopefully we'll see something suggested in that 100-day timescale that they have stated. But for actual change to come in, I'm not sure when that will be, but hopefully we'll find the information on that one pretty soon.
I think, yes, just to echo what Juliet has just said about potentially what could be changed quickly, because that would be regulation as opposed to legislation. So they could change it. They could change that quickly. And I mean, I feel like I'm providing like a little bit of history and context as well. Remember that this used to be a government obligation. So the SSP, in the same way that maternity pay, it was compensated, was paid back to employers. 10 years ago, the law changed, and that it became a burden on the employer. So this is definitely a bigger burden on the employer. But actually, if we think about it, is it not fair? Is it not fair? I think it would be a fair change, but yes, one that the employer will have to take the hit on. So what we are saying is we're encouraging our clients, which we have been for the last 10 years, to manage sickness absence robustly, manage it well, engage, do all the proper things, and not just let people go off sick for 28 weeks and then go, oh, okay, now what do we do about them? Which we have seen some clients do. Like that's how they deal with sickness absence. So this is a really good opportunity to again be human, treat those people who are off sick as humans.
Thank you all for sharing. That was brilliant. We've got another live question following on from another mental health question from earlier. Will mental health days be classified as sickness? And is there a limit in a 12-month period like sickness where you can then review or flag their maybe return to work or any discussions you might have to have? Juliet, would you be happy to kick us off on that one, please?
Yeah, so I would always advise to manage mental health as sickness absence, as you would do any other sickness absence, and manage it in the same way. In terms of having a limit in a 12-month period, it sounds like that might be a contractual entitlement of a particular organisation. And really, when it comes to any absence and mental health in particular, it's very much a case-by-case basis. It depends on the reason, the history, the person, the role. So a lot of things to take into account there. But I think, as Emma mentioned, it is all about managing an absence case holistically, really, and looking at all of the circumstances. But I wouldn't necessarily separate mental health with any other reason for absence in how it's managed.
Nothing to add. I think Juliet handled that really well.
Yeah, no, I agree fully with everything. I think the main line is, if you're off work, you're off work. It's sickness, be it physical or mental, it's still sickness. But I think something that we do have to just be mindful of with the Equality Act is that anybody that has long-term mental health issues that could potentially then be classified as a disability. And I think that you just need to make sure that you really have a good understanding, have that open dialogue with the individual so that you really are understanding what it is that they need, and be as supportive as possible as you would with any physical health that isn't mental, obviously, to be able to get them back in. So reasonable adjustments, get your occupational health on point, any risk assessments that you need to do, just making sure that you've still got that documentation to show that you are doing as much as you reasonably can.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant. I'm just going to speed through a couple more now. I can't believe we've only got 10 more minutes to go. This one, is there any further detail on what the review of the apprenticeship levy skills uplift would look like? There is such a great opportunity for early talent, reskilling, and millions of levy opportunities that aren't used. especially in SME, where the challenge of headcount versus available time can deter better use of the levy. Emma, would you be happy to kick us off and then perhaps hand to Charlie and Juliet?
And a really short answer to that one, like there's no further information. I think that there's a commitment in the manifesto around education and this being and the recognition of education of needs of 16 to 19-year-olds being really important. But is there information about how it's going to operate? I haven't seen any.
So I've read in a couple of places, although don't take it as gospel, that at the moment we're very limited in the ways in which we can use the levy. And the talk's really about opening up how we can, specifically with regards to maybe 50% of the levy that you're contributing, being able to have a lot more flexibility. So where it's been solely on apprenticeships, opening it up to reskilling and upskilling your current workforce. So by doing that, they're enabling employers to have a lot more responsibility. They've kind of worldwide noticed, I think the stat is by 2030, 85 million roles will be unfilled worldwide because we won't have the right skills. So I think it's one of the ways that we're going to be looking at upskilling. So it's just a lot broader than what we conventionally have been using the apprenticeship levy for. And personally, this is the one that I'm most excited for.
Yeah, I can echo that. It has been well received. Whilst we haven't got the details, employers are quite pleased about this one just because it gives that more flexibility in how they can use the levy. And again, it's just one of those examples of an enhancement that the government has suggested here to work on that skills gap that is obviously a massive problem in the country. So I think it's a positive, and we're again waiting for the details as to what it actually looks like in practice.
Thank you very much, all. Another one in how can HR teams look after their own well-being in dealing with more legislation changes? How can we protect against burnout? So quite a big question here and something that's a very hot topic. Juliet, if you'd like to kick us off and then hand over. Thank you.
Yeah. I think Emma made a really good point at the start of this, is that we've all worked through COVID and the pandemic and what happened there. So I think we are actually probably primed now for what's going to happen in the coming months, having been through worse times. So hopefully it won't be as bad as that. But essentially it's going to be looking after each other. Even if we're in standalone position, we're in this HR community, we're on this webinar together. Let's link on LinkedIn and just ensure that everybody is getting through it and share knowledge as well. I think it's really, really important that we're all in this together and actually look at it with that mindset that it's exciting times and move with that positivity.
Yeah, I agree. So being in-house HR and having the team, I think there is a lot of pressure with a lot of unknowns. And being in an HR role, a lot of the time you need to advise and know all the details. And if you don't, be able to get that very quickly, and different pressures from all over. And I think on this one, it's absolutely fine to keep getting yourself educated in what it could mean, and then directing it to look at what it actually means for the business or who you're working alongside. I think burnout isn't just in the HR profession, it's everywhere. We're just the same with needing to upskill ourselves. We're just the same with everything else. So I think right now, if you change that narrative to seeing it as an upskilling exercise for you and your teams, and try and generate the engagement, and you're part of the biggest generational change. Like, we're part of history here. So I think it's make sure you're following all of the platforms that you need to, join as many webinars as you can to get the differing views, reach out. We're an HR community. I keep saying HR assemble or people teams assemble, but I think it's about reaching outside and really looking at what other places are doing. In particular, SMEs, there are quite a lot of resources available. People publicly share their policies and handbooks. I'm not saying take it as gospel and do the processes you need, but start to have an understanding of what a right to disconnect policy looks like, and then think about what it can look like for you and open up those conversations with your team. It's a time for us to be a lot more creative, because employees are going to know more about employment law than ever before. And that's something that, as HR professionals, any party you've ever gone to, you say you're HR, suddenly they send the brother who has an HR problem your way. And now employees are going to be more clued up. And I think that's a positive. People should know their rights. But I think right now we just have to maneuver this quite carefully and just be aware of how we're all doing and just reach out to one another. That's the main message from me.
Lovely responses from both of you. I was having a coffee with an employment lawyer recently, a guilty pleasure that we both had, and that was other people's crises. And it was how we loved a crisis, and how, because we were problem solvers essentially. And I think that's the burden of HR, isn't it? In terms of we're expected to put in the infrastructure and solve the problems, but I think it's also really important to be able to have boundaries around that. Disconnecting is one of those, and not checking your emails at ungodly hours, but also when you do get asked at a party about somebody's HR problem, respectfully decline. I'm really terrible at that. I love those sort of getting engaged in those problems, but actually it isn't necessarily good for us to be on all the time, or to be taking on other people's crises. And one thing that I find really useful is to be a signpost, and go, okay, like, I can't deal with that. But I do know people who can, and here's where I'll send you. So I think that if that's what happens in this situation, where you keep getting asked questions that you don't know the answer to, just send those people to good sources and other places. And I think that's and exactly what Juliet said as well, and Charlie about the HR community. I think it's a friendly community generally, and everyone's happy to answer questions, LinkedIn and in various Facebook groups. And I know that and the Breathe community as well is a very friendly bunch of consultants and people who use Breathe.
Thank you so much. That was such brilliant answers from all of you, with such a sense of connectedness. Thank you so much. Just going to try and squeeze in another question. I reckon we can do it. How can SMEs, HR in SMEs, ensure they stay compliant throughout these legislation changes? So any hints and tips and help from all of you would be much appreciated. Emma, if you could kick off.
Well, I think Charlie hit upon that when she said about connection, and I think there are groups, and networks. Be a part of that, and I think don't be afraid to ask what you think might be a silly question, and because somebody else might be thinking about this, might not know the answer as well, and will be really grateful when you ask it. So be interested. I think these are really interesting times. Don't be fearful. Keep interested, and watch what other people are doing and saying. There's a lot of rubbish content out there as well. So be mindful. Be selective about the sources. I think just keep interested. That would be my. I'm interested in this. I think keep interested.
I think Charlie mentioned as well about watching webinars. So obviously we're all here today, so we're all interested at this point, right at the beginning, and I'm sure that these will continue through HR Solutions. We have webinars also. We have one coming up later in the year, looking at the year ahead for 2025, which will include all of these things that we've been talking about, but hopefully with a lot more detail once we know it. So all of these resources are out there, and it is a case of, like Emma said, finding the good ones. Maybe switching off the ones that aren't as good, but and sharing the knowledge as well. I think that's so important for that HR community again.
Thank you so much all. I believe we're at time now. So thank you, Juliet, Emma and Charlie, for your amazing insights today. Really appreciate you joining us. And thank you to our audience who have been super engaged. I've seen so many reaction buttons from you all, so that is brilliant to see. Again, if you want to connect with Juliet, Emma, or Charlie, or all of them, you can do so on the panel on your screen. Their LinkedIn's right there, so you can just hit the button. We've also got a couple of really helpful blogs in the related content area, so feel free to have a look at those. We will also be having some upcoming webinars, so watch this space. And if you missed our employment law and mental health webinar, you can find this on Bree's webinar resource hub. So again, thank you so much everyone for joining today, and a huge thank you to Emma, Charlie and Juliet. We'll see you next time. Thank you.